Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Armenian News Network Groong Week in Review for July 27, 2025. Today, we're talking with Benyamin Poghosyan. He's a senior fellow at APRI Armenia, which is a think tank based in Yerevan.
And before we start, a quick note, Groong is the only independent podcast that covers Armenia week after week without funding from foreign governments or non-government agencies or any outside agendas. If you value that kind of clarity and consistency, help us keep going, like, share, and comment. And if you can, chip in through our donate page, which is at podcasts.groong.org/donate. Thank you for being part of this, and on with the show.
Thank you. Hello, Benyamin. Welcome to the Groong podcast.
Hello, Asbed. Hello, Hovik. Thanks for having me, and it's always a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you, Benyamin, because we were not able to schedule you earlier in the month, which is usually when we have you. So we're going to have the benefit of having you this week and also next week, because it's early August.
Hopefully it will be interesting also for our audience.
Yes, indeed.
It always is, so I'm pretty sure that it'll continue to be. But let's begin with the most talked about issue recently, which is the so-called, corridor. So on July 21st, this is, I guess, a week ago now, Pashinyan's spokesperson, Nazali Baghdasaryan, responded to Ilham Aliyev's so-called Zangezur corridor claim as part of an Armen press piece. Usually when they don't want to answer any tough questions, they put out a short statement on Armen press. And echoing Pashinyan's style, she said that Armenia has, and I'm quoting, never discussed, is not discussing, and will not discuss the terminology and the subsequent logic put forth by Aliyev. If you understood anything by that statement, then you get a medal from us. She also stressed that Armenia is only promoting Pashinyan's so-called Crossroads of Peace plan. And we are by default led to assume that this is different from the so-called Zangezur corridor, and it somehow maintains Armenia's sovereignty over pieces of strategic territory that this corridor would have to pass through. But since returning from Istanbul, Pashinyan has actually been saying that, we should actually be not so allergic to the word corridors. In fact, even worse, when he was in Istanbul and talking to the Armenian community there, he used terms like Turan for the Turkish word for the Pan-Turkic Empire, and said that the crossroads of peace is not a challenge to the Turan road. And meanwhile, Aliyev hasn't softened his tone. He was in Stepanakert last week, and he basically brazenly said that they don't want to see any Armenians when they travel from mainland Azerbaijan to Nakhichevan, and that's the end of the story. So can you help us understand who is saying the truth here and who is lying, and what is Pashinyan discussing with Aliyev?
Okay, I may call it like a $1 billion question, because here we do not only have Pashinyan and Aliyev, but now Americans jumped with these not published ideas of either leasing some territory in Syunik or bringing some private American company, which Armenian government may potentially outsource some authorities in this part of Syunik. Look, the problem is that, first of all, this American offer, whatever it was, it has not been published yet. So it's very difficult to give any professional assessment what Americans offer was when you don't know the details. Frankly speaking, you don't know nothing, because we have only leakages. One leakage was from US ambassador in Turkey, Tom Barrack, who itself, he's in his late 70s, I guess, and he was just Trump's personal friend, billionaire with no understanding in diplomacy.
Another real estate magnate.
Yes, real estate magnate or mogul or whatever, who had, I may assume, no basic involvement or understanding of diplomacy, and also a very complex nature of ethnic conflicts, which is also Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict. But he said that there is some 32-kilometer of road, and there are some tribes, speaking about some, I don't know, some mountains, people in some remote areas of the world, and these tribes are fighting for 32 kilometers of the road, but US offering to lease the territory. So what we know, that really there was an offer to lease the territory, and we know this not only from Mr. Barrack's statement, but also, I guess, 2-3 days ago, chairman of Euro Integration Commission of Standing Commission of Armenian Parliament, Mr. Yerevan, he publicly stated that yes, Americans came up with the idea to lease territory in Syunik, but this idea was rejected by the Armenian government because the lease of the territory was violating our sovereignty. So we may at least say that definitely there was a offer to lease the territory because this was confirmed by US ambassador in Turkey, who is also the personal friend of President Trump. And also this was confirmed by high-level Armenian parliamentarian, influential member of Civil Contract Party. And as far as I understand the internal modalities of Civil Contract Party, no one would dare to make such a statement. Yes, there was an offer to lease, but our Armenian government rejected without getting green light, if not personally from Pashinyan, but from the higher echelons of party line. So this is a more or less clear side. That was an offer to lease and Armenia rejected. Publicly, officially, Armenia rejected because this violates Armenia's sovereignty. I don't exclude that beside this reason, probably Armenia rejected also because Armenia might receive some warnings both from Iran and Russia, that both Iran and Russia will not tolerate the lease of Armenian territory along Armenia-Iran border, because if it's a leasing, and as some experts said that United States wants to transform Syunik, or at least part of Syunik, into the next Hong Kong until 1997. We know the story of Hong Kong. Probably Iranians and Russians will be absolutely unhappy, put it very mildly, absolutely unhappy to see Armenia-Iran border under the de facto control of the United States, because leasing and Hong Kong means that the part of Syunik would become US protectorate. And we know what does it mean for Iran, but also it's not only Armenia-Iran border. This is also the only land border between Eurasian Economic Union and Iran.
Yeah.
And we know that Eurasian Economic Union and Iran signed a free trade agreement, which just fully entered into force. But also, as Russia made a statement, he said that, look, when we are speaking about Americans dealing with part of Armenia's border, let's say Armenian border with mainland Azerbaijan, Armenia's border with Nakhichevan, let's not forget that these are also borders of Eurasian Economic Union. And we know that as any trade or customs union, Eurasian Economic Union has specific rules regarding the customs, etc. So I may assume that Armenia rejected this leasing offer, first because it really violates Armenia's sovereignty, making part of Armenia into some sort of protectorate, and B, potentially, this is my, I would say, educated guess, because probably some warnings came from Iran and Russia that, okay, if you will transform part of Syunik into the US protectorate, then probably the Syunik will become next battlefield between Iran, Russia, United States, and Israel.
I mean, it doesn't take a genius to realize that this would be the response from Iran and Russia if Armenia ever tried to do this. Pashinyan seems to be, I don't know how to say it, but this
Tone deaf.
tone deaf. I mean, this very naughty child. When you tell him not to do something, and he keeps trying to push the the envelope. But I mean, we're talking about war and the fate of an entire country here. So didn't he know that, or couldn't he know that this was going to be the response by Russia and Iran? And is this somehow negotiations through statements? Maybe Iran would not agree to a lease, but maybe Iran could agree to a more degraded version of the lease, maybe some kind of an infrastructure deal where the US would build the infrastructure. I just can't fathom that Pashinyan would go for such a move knowing what Russia and Iran's reactions would be. So what's going on,
I think that we discussed about this leasing offer, which was there and was rejected by Armenia. But also we know that there was a lot of talk about outsourcing. And we know that, for example, the same day when Pashinyan met with Aliyev in Abu Dhabi, or next day or day before, Deputy Foreign Minister gave an interview to Armenian media and said that if Armenia's principles of sovereignty and reciprocity will be there, Armenia is not against to outsource some modalities of the highway. Unfortunately, this term outsource is a very vague one, and it can be manipulated and can be mean different things. And none of us is a key legal expert on international trade and international outsourcing to understand what exactly outsourcing mean and what the differences between lease and outsource. But in any case, we have two options. Is a lease, which was rejected publicly by Armenian government, and also most probably we have another offer to outsource this highway or some part of this highway construction, or maybe security, or maybe some passport and passport and customs control to this American company. Again, we don't know the details. What does this outsourcing mean? And because we do not have details, it's a little bit complicated to assess what will be Iranian and Russian response. Of course, definitely they will not be happy, but as you mentioned, maybe if both Iran and Russia will have two choices, either making part of Syunik into Hong Kong and de facto American protectorate, or some private American company outsourcing, maybe they will be more inclined to accept outsourcing variant. Of course, the best case scenario for them to see no Americans there. But the problem for this outsourcing scenario is that we do not know details. So again, it's very difficult to give any professional assessment. What does this outsourcing mean? Will it have any impact on Armenia's sovereignty? Does it again mean that Armenia will have limited sovereignty? But besides this outsourcing issue, there is another component. In the last 2 years, Armenian government and Prime Minister himself stated or reiterated many times that besides the issue of sovereignty, another key principle for Armenia is reciprocity, which means that whatever modalities will work for Syunik, for Azerbaijanis to enter from Azerbaijan to Nakhichevan via Syunik, the same modality should imply for Armenians who will use Nakhichevan to reach from Yerevan to Merli in the easiest way, and also to use territory of Nakhichevan to reach from Armenia to Iran, including potential railroad connection, and also to use mainland Azerbaijan territory to reach Russia, to have second alternative land connections to Russia. But during this so-called global media forum, I think it was a week ago probably, President Aliyev stated very clearly that Azerbaijan will not tolerate neither outsourcing nor any foreign presence in Azerbaijani soil. He simply said that, okay, it's up to Armenia. If they want to outsource, to lease, to rent, to lend, or whatever to do with their territory, it's Armenia's choice. Azerbaijan will never accept any foreign presence over its territory under any terms, which means that automatically the principle of reciprocity is not accepted by Azerbaijan. So if the principle of reciprocity was as important for Armenia as the principle of sovereignty, it means that no discussion can be taken place, or at least no decision can be taken place regarding even this outsourcing. Even if we believe that outsourcing is less dangerous or outsourcing does not infringe on Armenia's sovereignty, but because Azerbaijan rejects to outsource to the same company any modalities in Nakhichevan or in mainland Azerbaijan, it means that either there could be no deal, or if Armenia convinced or forced to accept this outsourcing, while Azerbaijan is not doing anything and rejecting any outsourcing, it means that Armenia at least violates one of its two key principles. Again, principle number one, sovereignty. Principle number two, reciprocity. And third issue regarding the problems of this complicated story. If only Azerbaijan gains access to Nakhichevan via Syunik, a railroad and highway, and we know that Turkey starts construction of a railroad from Kars to Nakhichevan, and the construction will be completed approximately in 2028 or 2029, it means that Turkey and Azerbaijan will have no incentives to open any border with Armenia. They will be fully satisfied by this Azerbaijan, Syunik, Nakhichevan, Igdir, Kars railroad. And again, they will have zero incentive to open Armenia-Turkey border, Armenia-Nakhichevan border,
That's right. And they're done
Armenia-mainland
after
Azerbaijan
that.
border. Yes, and then we will have a situation when de facto there will be only one communication opened under the term of restoration of communications. Additional connection between Azerbaijan and Turkey via Syunik and Nakhichevan, adding this existing connection via Georgia, and Armenia will receive nothing.
Benjamin, as a member of the Eurasian Economic Union, can Armenia unilaterally make concessions that jeopardize the trade between the Eurasian Economic Union and Iran, because suddenly we now have economic reasons for these entities to suddenly interfere in any kind of discussions and say that cannot happen?
It's a very interesting question. Frankly speaking, I have not known the details of Eurasian Economic Union trade policy, but also the issue is here that what we understand under the term of interruption. If it was lease, like the territory became de facto US protectorate, then we may assume that it could be interruption because Iran is under US sanctions, and how you can transport any Iranian goods or any goods to Iran
Exactly.
via US protectorate. But if we speak only about this outsourcing, and again, we do not know details of what this outsourcing is about, but in theory, you may have some American company which are doing some passport or customs control on Armenia-Azerbaijan and Armenian-Nakhchivan borders, but it has nothing to do with Armenia-Iran border cross checkpoint in near Agarak. So theoretically, I think we cannot argue that if there will be outsourcing, it's automatically mean the disruption for Armenia-Iran, or in this case, Eurasian Economic Union Iran land trade. If it was leasing or protectorate, I would assume that most probably this will definitely interrupt trade with Iran. But if it's only outsourcing, and this outsourcing will deal again only with Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Armenian-Nakhchivan borders, then in theory, you may still have Armenia-Iran checkpoint working. But again, the key problem for us that we don't know the details of this outsourcing. What does it mean? Does it mean only Americans, some few Americans standing on Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia-Iran border? This will be civilians. This will be private military company. Will they have weapons? What rights they will have? How they will interact, the Russian border troops. Let's not forget that still there are Russian border troops along this 44-kilometer Armenia-Iran border. So all are very complicated issues.
Okay, let's move on to our domestic scene, our second topic. Since we last spoke, which has been almost 2 months at this point, the 2026 election cycle has ramped up in Armenia in the form of Pashinyan's crackdowns on the Armenian church, powerful Armenians who support the church and do not support him personally, such as Samvel Karapetyan, who owns the Electric Network of Armenia, ENA, and a number of other enterprises, of course, the Dashir Pizza and other things, which have all of these enterprises have come under so-called nationalization threats and corruption scrutiny by Pashinyan's justice ministry. The current round of crackdowns began when Catholicos Garekin II spoke at an international conference in Switzerland about the right of return of Artsakh Armenians back to the homeland. And I would not be exaggerating if I say that Pashinyan and Anna Hagopian went absolute batshit crazy in reaction to this on Facebook and the internet. And since then, we've had the NSS arresting opposition leaders, Samvel Karapetyan and his family members, church leaders, and on and on. Pashinyan has made it a priority for civil contract members to attack church leaders on Facebook and everywhere as often as possible. Probably, I'm going to guess, that the year-end review of these people as party members of civil contract will include how much they actually have done in opposition to Garekin II and Samvel Karapetyan, or haven't done. So it'll be an interesting year-end review for these people. The question is, what is the logic behind these attacks? Are they designed to eliminate competitors, adversaries of Pashinyan in the 2026 elections? Or are they a reaction to stamp out behavior that doesn't comply with Aliyev and Erdogan's demands from Pashinyan? Or is it just money? The use of administrative resources to confiscate properties of an unfriendly oligarch and to redistribute to a loyalist, because we've heard that there are some plans like that. What's going on in Yerevan?
Probably, I would say it could be like mix of all reasons which you mentioned, and there could be other reasons which we simply do not know. But probably the conventional wisdom tells us that the key issue is the upcoming parliamentary elections of 2026. Because regardless of what the ruling party wants to do, to be able to do anything beyond June 2026, they should remain in power. So from this perspective, remaining in power is the key imperative for them. Then they can continue to fight church, they can do A, C, B, D, E, F, G, H, or whatever. But if they are losing the power in in June 2026 parliamentary elections, of course, they are not able to do anything. So I would say that key here is the June 2026 parliamentary elections. And of course, my understanding is that civil contract believes that Samvel Karapetyan is actually making political bid. Okay, he actually made a political bid, but probably they thought that he's going to do political bid before he was arrested. Of course, we cannot know for 100%. Like, did Samvel Karapetyan did he have any plans to enter the politics before he was arrested? It's like a too complicated question to ask. But my understanding is that, look, if you look into the all polls in Armenia, and for example, the recent IRI polls, which was released, I think, like on July, in early July,
we have
and
a
the
number of
poll,
questions.
yes, and the poll was made in like June 2025. So this is more or less fresh polls. We will see that, like, while rating of prime minister is going down, I think his approval rating was approximately 13% this time. But also we see that, for example, the second in opposition was Robert Kocharian with 4-5%, but also there was like 60% who said that they don't know whom they are going to vote, or they will not take part in elections. But I think they don't know whom they are going to vote, and 60% is a staggering number. And you know that there were a lot of talks in last years that Armenia needs so-called third force, like the people who are not connected directly or indirectly with second or third president or even the first president of Republic of Armenia, and also have nothing to do with civil contract and the people who came to power as a result of 2018 events. So probably, of course, definitely civil contract also looks into this polls. I don't exclude that they can make their own polls, and they understand that there is a significant majority of people who are not going to vote for Mr. Pashinyan, but also they are not going to vote anyone. But if there will be a new force or new leader, then theoretically, even if like 1/3, let's say like 1/3 of this 60%, only 1/3, will somehow be motivated to go and vote for the new force or for the new leader, this automatically will make this new force or the new leader almost the leader, or at least equal as a prime minister. So I think from this perspective, probably prime minister understands that it will be extremely complicated for him to increase his ratings numbers. Like what he can do else. Like only hope is to.
But let me mention one of the most highly rated institutions were the armed forces, and the other one was the church. How is Pashinyan helping himself by attacking the church, the most popular institution in Armenia?
This is a good question, and I think if you compare with 2024, even church ratings went a little bit over, and you know that there are assessments that this fight against church even somehow helped the ratings of church to go up. There was also this type of discussions, but I think for church, okay, I will finish regarding the politics. So Pashinyan understands that if there will be any credible third force, it has significant chances at least to compete with Pashinyan in equal terms. And maybe then we may have in parliament some interesting combinations of coalitions between the third force and the second president or third president or whoever is going to enter the parliament. So I think the number one task for Mr. Pashinyan to prevent appearance or any chances of some credible so-called third force is coming out. Because if, and this is my personal assessment, if we will have the more or less the same situation as in June 2021, when we will have Mr. Pashinyan, second president and third president, plus these pro-European parties who probably will create some coalition, the forces who support the so-called Eurovote initiative, then I would bet that Mr. Pashinyan will keep his position as a prime minister, either as a one-party government or at least he will be able to join a coalition government with these pro-Western anti-Russian forces. So if we understand this, we may assume that Mr. Pashinyan knows this much better than us because he's part of daily politics. So the key task for him to prevent the emergence of any credible third force or new force, which can attract at least part of these 60% people. And my understanding is that attacks against Mr. Samvel Karapetyan probably is motivated by this, to discredit him, to show that he's a corruptioner, or again come up with these stories of robbery and etc. Of course, it will complicate it to accuse Mr. Samvel Karapetyan of robbing anything in Armenia, but you know that there is a new criminal case against him for money laundering or for like tax evasion or this type of thing. So this is one issue.
According to the poll, trust the church. That's compared to 38% of the respondents having a positive opinion about the prime minister's office, and then 24% of the respondents have a positive opinion about the National Assembly. So I think that's important to set the stage for. The only other institution above the church that has a higher positive rating is the army, which is 72%. I mean, I think that
Yes,
is
but also we should follow what this current government is doing. If you look into their statements or even social media posts, they know probably better than us that yes, church has significant higher ratings. But what they are now trying to tell the society, will society accept this explanation or not? It's another issue. But they are telling that this is not a fight or struggle against church. This is fight or struggle against the very small circle of leadership of church who violated church norms, rules, or etc. So they understand that fighting against church has very little, if any, chances for victory. But if you trying to transform or present what you are doing not as a fight against the church, but the fight against a very narrow circle of leadership of church, like Catholicos and few people close to him, then I'm not telling that this will be successful, but I'm just telling that they understand that you should not say, oh, I'm criticizing the church. And they are not telling that I'm going to destroy church. They are telling that we are going to improve church, we are going to change some rules or whatever, we are going to free the church from corrupt elite. And also, let's not forget that this type of anti-elite rhetoric is a part of any populist movement. And for example, in last few years, for example, Pashinyan was pushing forward this narrative against any elite. For example, if immediately after the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war, for example, almost all universities, the National Academy of Sciences, institutes of National Academy of Sciences, and other like so-called intellectual elites of the Republic, yes, publicly signed a statement, yes, demanding the resignation of Mr. Pashinyan. I'm speaking about November, December 2020, January 2021. And what was answer from Mr. Pashinyan? That look, for last 30 years, the very small circle of elites, they were like they were putting pressure on people. So he created the perceptions that there is a like a vast majority of ordinary citizens, and there is a very small group of elite who does not care about citizens and to use citizens to enjoy healthy, wealthy, or whatever life. And Pashinyan presented himself as a fighter against elites. And I think you can find this as a recurring narrative in any populist movement, even in United States, when President Trump was telling, let's drain the swamp. Yes, it was something like there is a very bad elite people and Mr. Trump should destroy the elite. So the same thing Prime Minister is trying to do with the church. He's not telling that we should destroy the church. He's telling that we should change the leadership of the church, trying to present this as a part of his fight against elites who were acting against ordinary citizens, against ordinary people. Will it be
Do you
successful
think
or
it will
not?
work? Yeah.
Okay, it's very difficult to say, but for example, look, it's very interesting, even regarding the poll. There was two lines about army, if you saw. There was a line, what do you think about army? And there was a line, what do you think about army leadership? And you can see that the rating of army leadership was significantly lower than rating of army. This is a message that for average people, like the leadership is not too much good. It is not good. So I don't exclude that if there will be also the separate line, like how do you assess Armenian Apostolic Church? And it was like a positive rating of 70%. Yes, approximately, let's assume.
Right.
And for army, it was 75 even. But how much was army leadership? It was significantly less, I believe. And my point is, what will be the answer if you put another line of question, what is your perception of church leadership? And I'm not sure that we will have the same 70% of people who had a positive assessment about the church. I'm not sure that the same 70% will say that we have positive assessment of church leadership. The same way as the people who had positive assessment on army, it was quite high. But the people who had positive assessment on army leadership, it was quite low. I am not sure about exact numbers, which means that all this narrative against elites who are acting against people's interest, who even exploiting the ordinary people, exploiting them to accumulate wealth, like to enjoy wealthy life. I don't know, spend months of expensive holidays in Europe, United States, while average Armenian is working non-stop, getting only like, I don't know, 500-600 US dollar per month, and is not able to cover even its basic needs. I think this type of talk may work. I'm not sure how much it may work against church, but again, for me, it will be interesting to see if there will be another question. How do you assess, or what are your approach or assessment on church leadership? And again, I will not be surprised if the number will be lower than the number regarding the overall Armenian Apostolic Church. And again, the prime minister narrative is that I am not fighting against church, I am not fighting against the institution, I am fighting against the small group of leaders who have other elites, like political elites and etc. Like even today, I mean, on this is Monday, like July 28th, like Prime Minister made a Facebook post that he said that opposition is speaking about apathy in Armenia, about apathy, about hatred, about potential political disturbances, but he said that this has nothing to do with ordinary citizen. There is an apathy, there is a hatred only in, as he called, like pseudo elites or whatever. So he constantly pushing these narratives that there is a people, like majority average people, probably who has no like even university education, people who has only high school diplomas, who are as a workers and etc. And he is supporting these people who were suffering and who were suffering under the rule of elite, and now he is a supporter of these people. And if he will be successful in this messaging, and we know that every Armenian citizen after 18 has a right to vote, and regardless you are elite, you are not elite, you have high school diploma, or you are a president of National Academy of Sciences, you have only one vote.
Can I quickly mention the army approval rating was 72%, and the army leadership was only 48%. So
it's significant.
Significant, very much. And I took it as the population having respect and honor for our soldiers,
institution,
but exactly the institution, but they do not respect the way the government is managing.
But I'm not sure that will translate to the church question as well, because I think in terms of faith, the hierarchy of the church is much more ingrained in terms of a part of the institution, while the leadership of the army can be replaced by the chief executive. The leadership of the church cannot be, at least constitutionally. So that's I think the only difference between those two. And I also want to mention one thing before we move on, that the strongest support for the church came from the 18 through 35 age group, which is interesting because there is this, I guess there's this popular belief that the younger Armenians are detached from traditional institutions. So to me, that was also an encouraging factor in this poll.
For me too, and frankly speaking, also surprising, because I would assume that the church will have higher ratings in the people like at least above 45 or even 55, because you know that there is a perception, you are right, that Armenian young Armenians, they are more exposed to these new ideas like liberalism, individualism, or whatever, and also they have much more opportunities to travel, mostly to Europe, to United States. And we know that, for example, in Northern Europe, majority of people, if you look into the polls in the Northern Europe, majority of people, they say that we don't believe to the God. They become atheists. So from this perspective, like Northern Europe has become almost communist state, at least if you speak about atheists. So I also assume that maybe as a majority of Armenian young people, 1835, will say that no, we don't trust the church, or even we don't believe to the God, we believe in individualism, liberalism, or whatever. But it assumes that no, according to these polls, yes, the vast majority of people from 18 to 35, they still appreciate the church.
Yeah, 72. So among those group, the overall support for church was 58%. Among the 18 to 35 age group, it was 72%. So just FYI. Let's close this topic by just also saying that the IRI is one of those three-letter agencies that we have been talking a lot about on this podcast. I don't know if talking about the messenger is appropriate in this conversation, but I think it's also important to know that this, sometimes I think at least In 2021 or 2022, we asked our guest Emil Sanamyan whether the questions or the way these polls are phrased, the timing of the polls could have political motivations based on the preferences of the funder of the poll, which is the US State Department and the US government. And he did refer to certain questions that were asked in a certain way. I'm not sure if the same thing stands for this poll. I wanted to get Benjamin's thought about that.
Okay, what I can say, of course, yeah, there is a mix, but what I can say, I know one of the leaders of IRI Armenia. Frankly speaking, he's my personal friend. I don't want to mention his name, and I can speak only about highest terms of his integrity. So from this perspective, I personally have no doubts about any sort of manipulation. And also, I know that IRI now has very tough times in Armenia because they were funded by USAID. And actually, like many people working in IRI office in Armenia have been laid off. Like only few remains, and I don't exclude that this poll will be the last action of IRI in Armenia because they were promised that there were promised that some part of USAID function will go to the State Department and probably in 2026 something will be restored, but this is very vague. But what is clear that when USAID was shut down, the IRI globally and particularly in Armenia, they facing huge problems with significant layoff of people working there.
Okay, Benjamin, let's talk a little bit about Russia in the South Caucasus. We often discuss Russian-Armenian relations, yet in 2025, and this is since December 2024, Azal flight crash, I think, Russian-Azerbaijani relations have really, really significantly tanked. While Pashinyan's pivot to the West is much talked about, less well advertised is Aliyev's pivot away from Russia. And since the complete ethnic cleansing of Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh, Russia has lost a key lever to control Azerbaijan. More recently, since Pashinyan agreed to so-called bilateral negotiations with Aliyev, Russia is also sidelined from influencing the shape of the agreements to come. What are the key factors in Russian-Azerbaijani relations, and why has Aliyev decided to take a somewhat antagonistic posture towards Russia with such confidence?
Okay, there could be different explanation. I would speak about two of them from my personal perspective. The key probably is that President Aliyev really believes that now Azerbaijan has become some sort of leader in South Caucasus or even a regional hegemon in the South Caucasus, and he wants that Russia behaves with Azerbaijan in accordance to this new Azerbaijani position. I think the key message is that forget about Azerbaijan as another post-Soviet country, as a part of Russian sphere of influence, and etc. Azerbaijan is a regional hegemon, and Azerbaijan demands respect. And we want Russia treats us as Russia treats other regional hegemons. I would say this is number one explanation why all these very tough actions by President Aliyev. Explanation number two, probably to sell these anti-Russian actions to the West, both to the European Union, but recently also to Trump administration. We know that this Trump administration and Russia relations are very fluid. Like Mr. Trump speaks with Mr. Putin, and 1 week it seems that they are best friends. But the next week, Mr. Trump is saying that I'm fully disappointed and I'm going to destroy Russian economy. Then they are becoming best friends. So it's now we live in a part when Trump is telling that, okay, I will even reduce ultimatum. It was a 50-day ultimatum. Now Trump speaks about like 10 or 12-day ultimatums to Putin.
Otherwise, it's funny that he says 10 or 12. Like, what's the difference between
yes.
10 or those 2 days?
No.
Like...
He says 10 or 12 or 15 if I am a good guy or something like that. Otherwise, threatening to put 100% tariffs on anyone who buys Russian oil and gas. And definitely the key buyers are here, Russia, India, and Turkey, mostly. They are the key buyers of Russian oil and gas. So it's very fluid. But in any case, I think the second motive was to sell these anti-Russian actions by Azerbaijan to the West, to show that, look, I am standing against Russia. And also, just today, Azerbaijan announced that it will supply gas to Ukraine via this Trans-Balkan pipeline. So Azeri gas will enter Turkey with Baku-Tbilisi-Erzurum, then Trans-Anatolian pipeline, then Trans-Adriatic pipeline. But while many a significant amount will go to Greece and Italy. Then we know that other part is going up to the north, to Serbia, Hungary, Romania. And there was a Trans-Balkan pipeline which provides Russian gas via Ukraine to these Balkan countries. Now Azeri gas will, from Greece, go up to the north, enter this Trans-Balkan pipeline and reach to Ukraine. And this also, Azerbaijan is presenting that, look, I am supporting Ukraine energy security or whatever. So there is also the part to sell to the West that I am standing against Russia, I am supporting Ukraine. But probably the key motive, I think, that President Aliyev really believes that Azerbaijan has become or is very close to become middle power. And he says that, okay, Russia should treat us not a small state, but as a middle power. And this is, by the way, very common narrative among Azerbaijani experts. And I'm speaking about experts who have very strong connection with Azerbaijani Ministry of Foreign Affairs or to Hikmet Hajiyev. Even when I speak with them regarding Armenia-Azerbaijan relations, they are telling, oh, Armenia now is like not a problem for us. Among our top priority lists, you are not even among our top 5. Yeah, we are dealing much more important issues. We are speaking with Israelis about fate of Iran. Like Azerbaijan is now a country who can decide fate of Iran with 1.6 million square kilometers of territory. What is tiny Armenia for us? And as one of Azerbaijani experts told me, like previously both in soccer terms, previously both Armenia and Azerbaijan were playing in the Europe League, if you're familiar with this soccer Europe League. Now he said Azerbaijan jumped into Champions League. So now we are playing into Champions League while Armenia remains in Europe League. So there could be no real competition between like Liverpool or Barcelona and, for example, I don't know, Tottenham or some mid-range Spanish team.
They've gone from Premier League to Champion League.
Something like that, yes.
So let me ask you the question then. Is the Russian-Azerbaijani so-called strategic partnership, which was signed just 2 days before Russia invaded Ukraine as part of the special military operation, is there anything left from that? Or do you see the relationship, the partnership being... actually, it wasn't a strategic partnership. It was a strategic alliance. So do you see this officially being degraded or revised in some way?
Okay, legally everything is the same place. I think the precise term of the relationship or the document was strategic interaction. They signed the declaration on strategic interaction. So legally everything is in place. And again, the relationship are very fluid. For example, when Azerbaijan launched its aggression against Nagorno-Karabakh in September 2023, killing 6 Russian peacekeepers, everybody knew that this was a blow also not only against Armenia, against Nagorno-Karabakh, but also against Russia's interest, because existence of Nagorno-Karabakh Republic was a leverage for Russia in South Caucasus. And it seems that this will significantly negatively impact the Russia-Azerbaijan relations. But then we saw August 2024, state visit of Mr. Putin, and he spent even the night in President Aliyev home like a personal friend, and a lot of fantastic talks about never-ending Azerbaijan-Russia strategic partnership, about international North-South corridor, that Azerbaijan will help Russia to connect with Iran and via Iran with India, etc., etc. So in August 2024, it seems that they forget about what happened in September 2023. But then a few months later, this December 2024 tragedy happened with Adal. And of course, it was just a pretext for Azerbaijan to do things. But again, because things are very fluid and they are not institutionalized, many things based on leaders' thinking, relationship, or whatever connects them, many things maybe we even don't know. So I don't exclude that a few months later, maybe Aliyev again will go to Moscow, and again he will hug with Mr. Putin, and they will again speak about never-ending Azerbaijan-Russia friendship. So everything is very fluid, but legally everything is in place. In the same way as, for example, Armenia-Russia strategic alliance. Everything legally is in place, yes? No one canceled 1997 Armenia-Russia treaty. No one canceled the treaty of 1995, according to which Russian military base is stationed in Gyumri. So legally everything is in place, but de facto we see that Russia-Armenia relations are far away from being relations between strategic allies. The same with Azerbaijan-Russia relations. Everything is there on paper. It does not work now, but no one can exclude that. Again, I will not be surprised that, for example, in a few months from now, we will see President Aliyev visiting Moscow, hugging with Mr. Putin, again criticizing European Union for this mission or criticizing the West.
So speaking of the Armenian-Russian relations, like you said, Pashinyan was in Moscow last week, and he didn't hug Putin, but maybe he hugged Mishustin. That's Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin. And we talked a little bit about the dynamics between the Eurasian Economic Union and Iran and trade via Armenia. So Pashinyan basically affirmed that Armenia has no plans to leave the Eurasian Economic Union, yet it appears to be introducing EU and US standards into the goods it's exporting to the Eurasian Economic Union. And I think that this was a topic between Russia and Armenia because it's disturbing some of the trade that's going on. Why did Pashinyan really go to Moscow last week?
Okay, first I guess Pashinyan went to Altai, not to Moscow, because there was
Right. There was some conference.
eco summit or whatever in Altai.
Mm-hmm.
And probably this was like not too much important summit for Mr. Putin to go. So Pashinyan had no chances but to hug with Mr. Mishustin. Or
Pashinyan
maybe,
and Anna Hagopian, by the way,
yeah,
I think went there.
Yes, and also their daughter, if I'm not mistaken. But in any case, so some believe that Pashinyan there was a message from Moscow that come and first explain what the hell is going on with this outsourcing, leasing, or whatever you are doing with Americans. And the second, that yes, you are right, that Deputy Prime Minister Mr. Overchuk stated that Armenian government is making some changes in standards which are not in line with Eurasian Economic Union standards, and this may create problems for Armenia. But this was not the first time when Mr. Overchuk made such a statement. I believe he made such a statement a few months ago, or maybe even in late 2024, that what Armenian government is doing in standards, trying to come closer with European Union, and he said that we understand that Armenia wants for some of its goods to be able to be exported to the European Union market. We understand that it's a 450 million people with much higher purchasing power than probably Eurasian Economic Union market. But also Mr. Averchuk said, again, a few months ago, that this is not in line. And if Armenia will continue, then Eurasian Economic Union will have to take some steps, and this may create some problems for Armenia. I think, but everybody understands that this whole saga about Armenia becoming member of EU even 20 years from now, I think in his last press conference, Pashinyan expressed hope that Armenia may become member of the European Union 20 years from now. I think it's a very excellent bit to speak about 20 years from now, because nobody knows what will happen even 5 years from now. So we remember then just a few days before 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war, Prime Minister Pashinyan launched his very ambitious project of Armenia 2050. But for example, it was less than 5 years ago. But who remembers now about this Armenia's Vision 2050? But before, it was several months. There was hot discussions, and it seems that this is like the most important document in the entire Armenian history since probably the struggle between Tigran the Great and Roman Empire. Less than 5 years, nobody remember about this. Yes, nobody remembers about this. If I will ask anyone in Yerevan, what are your assessment about this Armenian Strategy 2050, which was officially presented on September 21, 2020, I believe 99% even don't remember such a thing. Which means that, for example, 10 years from now, maybe no one will remember that Prime Minister of Armenia expressed hope that Armenia may become a member of EU 20 years from now, which means around 2045.
That's about right.
I think everybody understands that this is like mostly domestic political discourse, but also I think Russia is simply just not happy. They understand that this is for domestic political discourse, but also they want to say Armenia that, okay, guys, I understand that you need votes. We understand that the European Union still has a positive image, despite, by the way, according to the same IRI polls, the US and EU image also declined for approximately 10%, I guess, compared to the polls of 2024. For example, now only 49% is ready to vote yes if there will be a referendum to join European Union, while in autumn 2024 it was, I believe, 58% who was ready to vote yes. But in any case, still European Union is more or less perceived positively among Armenian population, and I think Russia understands that, okay, Armenia is doing this, government doing this to get additional votes ahead of this crucial June 2026 parliamentary elections, but also they want to keep Armenia in a place, telling that, okay, you are under the radar. So we understand that you need something to do for your domestic political reasons, but not be too active. This is my explanation.
One thing that Overtook mentioned, I believe, was the drop, the 45% drop in foreign trade with Armenia. And, most of Armenia's foreign trade, as a matter of fact, is reliant on Russia. What do you attribute the decline to, and can it be mitigated, considering that it's primarily reliant on the dynamics of the war in Ukraine?
Okay, my understanding is that this 45% decline, mostly, if not solely, is a result of the complete decline or even stop of re-export of Russian golds and diamonds from Russia to United Arab Emirates via Armenia.
Right. Yeah.
Which means that like it was a artificial boost, and now we simply do not have this boost. Like in 2024, Armenia-Russia trade was 12.5 billion US dollar. 2024. In 2025, I believe it will be $6 billion, but this remaining $6 billion was re-export of Russian gold and diamond to United Arab Emirates. Now Russia is not doing this thing via Armenia. Probably they find other channels. Some argue that now it's being done through Central Asian Republic like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, or maybe through some other channels. So simply taking out this re-export of gold and diamond, and you will have the 6 billion US dollar. So if there was no re-export of gold and diamond, I think Russia-Armenia trade will be approximately 6 billion in 2024, and approximately it will be 6 billion in 2025, which means that if we kick out this artificial boost, Armenia-Russia trade in 2025 will be at the same level as in 2024.
Okay, so since we covered Armenia and Azerbaijan, I think we should also cover Georgia. So we know that municipal elections are gearing up in Georgia, specifically Tbilisi. And we know that the West is again ramping up its anti-Georgian dream rhetoric. Both, I believe, the United States, the EU Parliament, and I believe even the UK have passed resolutions that have condemned Georgian Dream, called for sanctions, and so forth. We talked about it in our previous podcast with Archil Sikharulize a few weeks ago or last week. How do you find Georgia managing to navigate this polarized storm, geopolitical storm, between Russia and the West, especially as Ukraine is concerned and many other, I guess, Russia and West points of tension are concerned?
I think what is Georgian government trying to do is not to join any like overt anti-Russian actions, but also is not only for them between Russia and the West. And I don't buy these arguments that they are pure pro-Russian. There is a pure pro-Russian government in Georgia, or even Russian puppets who wants to make Georgia again part of, I don't know, Russia-Belarus Union or whatever. I don't believe on this. Because we also see that Georgia is reaching out to China. For example, just today there was a huge Georgian parliamentary delegation visited China, discussing a lot of things, middle corridor investments, even cooperation in education, tourism, and etc. So I think Georgia trying to bet its chances not to make any overt anti-Russian steps, but also I think they are looking towards China, and probably also they may think about having additional something with Turkey. So of course it's also complicated for Georgia, but let's not forget that also there is an issue of keeping the power. Like every government in the world, especially in this type of the countries like Armenia, Georgia, etc., when power intertwined with wealth or even with personal security, the key task of any government is to remain in power. So the same is for Georgian government. Regarding this autumn 2025 local elections, I think there is no unity among Georgian opposition. Some called for boycott. Some said that we are not going to boycott. Let's see. There were like talks that probably Georgi Gaharia may again take part in elections in Tbilisi, like in 2021, I believe. He also was one of the candidates for the Tbilisi mayoral issue. But as far as I understand, if there is no significant external or internal shock, and I don't see any reason for internal shocks, probably Georgian Dream will remain in power until 2028. This is my personal assessment.
Benjamin, you recently wrote about the implications of the US-Israeli 12-day war against Iran. You discussed in that article in Mirror Spectator, I believe, how the use of force over diplomacy could embolden Azerbaijan's regional ambitions, and it could pose a threat to Armenia. And you had warned that Armenia's reliance on Iran for trade makes it a vulnerability for Armenia. And then you also talked about how destabilization of Iran could result in huge refugee inflows into Armenia. You also made some recommendations, but I wanted to ask you, how serious are these vulnerabilities? And did you what vulnerabilities did Armenia face during the war itself, during the 12-day war? We know that some, truck traffic was disrupted. We already started seeing some people coming into Armenia. How big of a problem was it during this 12-day war, and how realistic is a threat of a larger scale event in case things continue to go south?
Okay, my article and the implications was not implications of the 12-day war. This mostly was an implication for potential large-scale war, which may result in significant destabilization of inside Iran. Because to see like if you speak about implications for 12-day war, we see only like minor disruptions in export-import operations, and also like very small number of people coming to Armenia, by the way, mostly foreigners. Indian students came to Armenia to be evacuated. I guess some citizens of some other countries came to Armenia to be evacuated. But Armenia was lucky that despite the very first tough few hours in the early morning of June 13, when part of military leadership was killed in Iran, Iranian system did not crack down. And there was no collapse of state institutions. But what I was trying to say in my article, no one can exclude the potential for the new, even longer Iran-Israel war or Iran-Israel-US war. And no one can exclude that as a result of this potential new, longer war, there could be significant destabilization inside Iran, even state collapse. And in this case, as I mentioned, first, the threat of separatist movements. Now we are speaking that we should not allow the Zangezur corridor to be established or even part of Syunik to be leased and become American protectorate because we may lose the border with Iran. But let's assume what may happen if, as a result of significant internal destabilization, one day we will find ourselves facing not Iran south to Armenia, but let's say Southern Azerbaijan Independent Republic and facing two Azerbaijans. In this case, even Azerbaijan does not need any Zangezur corridor to cut us from Armenia. Or what if, as a result of significant destabilization, hundreds of thousands of Azeri-speaking people with Iranian passport, but still Azeri-speaking people, will penetrate Syunik within 1 week? It will mean that automatically Syunik will become majority Azeri-speaking populated area, and then Azerbaijan may use this even as a pretext to enter troops into Syunik, telling that, look, my compatriots are being killed or whatever. So
mistreated, yeah.
yes, mistreated. So my article was mostly about potential implications of there will be another longer, larger scale war which will significantly destabilize Iran. And my idea was that Armenia as a state and the Armenian government should be ready for this scenario, not to say, okay, yes, this time we were happy that Iran didn't crack down, that war ended within 12 days, and there was no longer war or no long American military campaign. But it does not mean that this may not happen. Just yesterday, I think, speaking with the UK Prime Minister, Mr. Trump said that we are getting bad signals from Iran. They still insist on this uranium enrichment on Iranian soil, which is absolutely unacceptable for the United States. And Trump said that if Iran will try to resume enrichment, then definitely I will send against these B-2 or B-52, I guess it was B-2 bombers, to bomb Iran, which means that the threat is there and Armenia should be ready. And I gave some basic recommendations. Of course, for more detailed recommendation, probably you need the entire institute or state apparatus to work up. But this was just like a warning sign and like basic recommendations, what Armenia may do to be more ready in case if there is a like 3-month-long war in Iran with internal destabilization, with separatist movements, with Syrian or Libyan scenario in Iran.
Okay. And what are some of the major, I guess, recommendations that you provided? What are some of the things,
number one, I think I provided several recommendations. Number one, on business, Armenia now should try to understand at least, are there any ways to reroute at least part of goods which we are receiving or exporting via Iran, via Georgia, and try to think about that. So to be able to restore part of supply chains. Second, Armenia should be ready to prevent this large-scale penetration of refugees. Also speaking with the UNHCR office. to be able to very quickly establish the screening centers or filtration centers along Armenian-Iran border, not to allow all refugees. Because under the international humanitarian law, yes, you are obliged to accept refugees, but you also have a right not to accept anyone who can be danger for your national security. But for doing this, you need infiltration and screening centers. And this should be done with the support and in collaboration with UNHCR, which has an office in Yerevan. But you cannot do this already when the mess starts. You should be ready now. So when mess starts, you should be ready. So this was this type of recommendations, of course.
Has the Armenian government taken any steps to prepare for these things?
Frankly speaking, I don't know about what Armenian government is doing, so my answer will be like speculative, but I may only hope. And of course, what I telling that, to be very frank, it's not like a genius thing. It's like I think anyone who understands what's happening in Iran and the following the geopolitics may come up with this recommendations or with this threat assessment. So I hope that people sitting in government, if not the top leadership, now today we discuss a lot of things about institutional leadership. So, but also the government is not only top leadership. There are hundreds of thousands of people working in the mid-level with experience and with knowledge. And so let's hope that at least they will push up their leaders.
Okay, Benyamin, we want to be mindful of your time, so let's wrap up our topics here. And let me ask each of you if there's something on your mind that you would like to share with our listeners. Hovik, I'd like to always pick on you first.
Well, the only thing I can say is that Pashinyan has promised to storm the Holy See in Etchmiadzin, and he promised to sort of lead the liberation of the Holy See. And many people were expecting that to happen this weekend during Vartavar. That didn't materialize, but nevertheless, I think that I remain concerned, and I think that the Armenian opposition remains concerned about potential moves by Pashinyan, and basically the entire nation of Armenia is sitting on the edge. I think it will be a huge mistake and a huge showdown and potentially some civil strife if Pashinyan decides to push ahead with it. But so far, I'm not seeing any signs of him backing down.
It seems like Pashinyan didn't go to Etchmiadzin on Vartavar. He went to somewhere around Sevan.
Well, yeah, I mean, he didn't announce that he was going to do it on Vartavar, although he sent signals and many people thought that Vartavar could be the date that he does it. But he did say that he will start his march against the Holy See from the square, I believe the central square in Vagashapat, which is the official name of the town of Etchmiadzin.
Benyamin, what's on your mind?
Okay. First of all, just very quickly, I would express my hopes that this is not going to happen, the scenario which Hovik described. But also, I would add that, unfortunately for Armenia, we are being drawn more and more into this geopolitics of also Middle East, like Middle East come to South Caucasus. And I think we should be very careful on this because all these corridors, outsourcing, or even leasing, lending, or whatever, is bringing South Caucasus close to the Middle East, and Middle East is now full of conflicts. We see what's happening in Gaza, Israel, Palestine, and etc. So my advice will be let's look more into the Middle East, not only to the Europe, because like Brussels is like 5,000 kilometers from Yerevan, maybe, or 4,000, I'm not sure, but definitely thousands kilometers away of Yerevan. While, for example, Tabriz is less than 1,000 kilometers, and Erbil, like Iraqi Kurdistan, is less than 1,000 kilometers. So let's also look into the Middle East because maybe unfortunately, but South Caucasus is becoming more and more entangled into this greater Middle East geopolitics.
Thank you, Benyamin, for joining us today. We hope to talk to you again very soon, next week, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
That was our week in review, recorded on July 28, 2025. We've been talking with Dr. Benyamin Poghosyan, who is a senior fellow at APRI Armenia. This is a Yerevan-based think tank, and he's also the chairman of the Center for Political and Economic Strategic Studies.
And for more information on the participants of this episode, check out our show notes, podcasts.groong.org/episode number. We also try to include most of the important reading material that we have used in constructing the outline for this show. And before we wrap up, I do have one more favor to ask you. Hundreds of you tune in every week on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thank you for doing that. But we want more people to discover us through those platforms specifically. So if you haven't already, if you listen to us on those platforms, hit the subscribe button. It's free and it helps push our episodes to more listeners. And if you're already subscribed, consider dropping us a rating. That would also help increase our visibility. So thank you for keeping us going, and more importantly, for keeping us independent.
Yeah. Share our shows. Share our shows with your friends and enemies, as Hovik likes to say. It makes us reach more people. Well,
You make
I'm
it sound
Asbed
like I'm the only one who has enemies, Asbed. Just kidding.
No, that's not what I meant to say. I'm Asbed Bedrossian. I'm in Glendale, California.
Asbed, have you ever recorded a show from anywhere else but your home in Glendale?
Yes, I have. All the way
you
back in 2020, 2021, summer of 2021. Every summer I was recording out of Toronto. I've also recorded out of Las Vegas, but I don't
Nice.
always say those things.
I was not aware of that. Well, anyway, now I can say that I am not in my permanent location. I'm in Gavar, Armenia.
Tell me
So
more
there you
about
go.
Gavar. What's in Gavar? What are you doing there?
We like to vacation here. It's a quiet place, and it's an
Where is
interesting
it
town to me.
approximately in Armenia?
It's west of Lake Sevan, so 10, 15 minutes car ride from here to Sevan. So, easy, quick access to the lake. And also the town itself is originally populated by migrants from Bayazid, what's now Dogu-Bayazid, Bayazid in Turkey. And after the Russo-Persian Wars in the early 19th century, Russia, I guess, made a call to all Armenians to repopulate Eastern Armenia. And as part of that, many Armenians from the Ottoman Empire moved to the town of Gavar and essentially refounded it. But that town, I mean, there are ancient archaeological research sites here, and there's evidence from even the Urartun period. So there has been settlement here for a long time. And for
Hovik,
those,
you know how every region in Armenia or every town in Armenia has a little thing about them. For example, there are lots of Abaransi jokes and everything. Are there any kind of Gavarsi jokes?
oh, well, you should know that if there is an Albaransi joke and it has to do with low IQ, even though
I didn't say it.
Well, for Gavartsis, they're the butt of all Armenian alcohol jokes, and they're known in the jokes, at least they're portrayed as heavy drinkers, but in reality, I think from my experience at least, they just tell very long toasts. And every toast seems to have a preamble and an appendix or multiple appendices. And from my experience, these guys can handle their liquor. The other thing about Gavar, it's probably the highest city in Armenia. It's situated above 2,000 meters above sea level. So it's a pretty high altitude town, and I don't know, it's very peaceful for me. So I like to take some time to rest here.
I don't want to get too political about this, but is the town affected by the loss of the Goris-Kapan highway?
A little bit because not just Goris-Kapan, but many people traveling to Artsakh would drive east towards Lake Sevan and then would drive south to visit Artsakh through Vardenis and to the Karvacha region. The Karvacha region was one of the main routes to reach Artsakh. The other one was the Goris region. So if you didn't take Goris, if you wanted to go through Goris, you would drive south. But if you wanted to go through Vardenis, you would drive east, and you would. So there's less traffic, and also there's less traffic because the Goris-Kapan highway is closed. So some of the Iran-Armenia traffic went through Goris-Kapan, and if it went north to Georgia, it could also take this road. So definitely less. Gavar was never known for its tourism, which is unfortunate, but there are even less people traveling to this region nowadays.
Okay, well, then you'll be known for your very clean air. Okay, folks, like we said, share our shows, like our shows, everything else. Find us on social media. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening.
Take care.